Welcome to the Trevor Meyer Show. I'm Trevor Meyer, and today we are going to rank the entire Karate Kid franchise. That's right, everything up to Karate Kid Legends, including Cobra Kai. All right, we're going to throw Cobra Kai in there too. So, number 7, The Next Karate Kid. This has nothing to do with Hilary Swank's performance. I would have loved to see her come back. Spoiler alert also for all of these, okay? I'm going to talk about Cobra Kai. I'm going to talk about Karate Kid Legends, especially Legends, because I got some issues with that one. But, yeah, it's full spoilers for everything. If you haven't seen them and you don't want to be spoiled, then don't watch this video just yet. So, Next Karate Kid, they never actually bring that character back, and I would have loved to have seen that, as well as Michael Ironside, Walton Goggins, other, little characters in that movie could have been brought forward into the Cobra Kai universe, into the Cobra Kai series, if it had gone on long enough, and they could have revitalized these characters. So it's not that I have a problem with, it's the structure of the film itself, and also the final conflict is a bit odd because usually these things end with some sort of a karate tournament or a fight to the death, or that's about it, right? That's pretty much where you end up with these. And with this one, it was just odd. It was almost like the final conflict, the final climax of the film was about the level of just one of the other fight scenes in the other Karate Kid movies before the climax, So in a lot of Karate Kid movies, they have many fights throughout the film before they get to the final conflict. And the Next Karate Kid, I really don't remember very many fight scenes in it. And one little one ends up being the ending of the movie. So, and it's just odd. I don't understand this alpha squad, student body, police force, whatever they got going on. Like, I get it, but they're just such over-the-top villains, and it kind of tracks with the trajectory of the franchise up to that point where it got sillier and sillier, campier and campier, and the villains were just inhuman monsters, and that's kind of where we got to that point. And there's a lot to do with a bird that's up on the roof. I don't know. It's just not a very interesting story. It almost has the vibe of like a made-for-TV movie. It's a movie of the week. That's what it feels like to me. And it's the acting is at that level. The dialogue is at that level. Again, nothing wrong with Hilary Swank's performance and Pat Morita as Mr. Miyagi again. But the other side characters are written so oddly and so stiffly, one-dimensionally, and acted in a similar fashion. So the whole structure of the movie is a bit weird. I like the stuff with the monks. It's a new side that we haven't quite seen before, where you're mastering not just the physical part of it, but the spiritual part of it, because she already had some karate skills, so now she has to learn, like, inner peace. So that helped. Like, that was some new, interesting material. But other than that, it didn't have much going for it. Number 6, Karate Kid Part 3. Now, this one I'm kind of retroactively adding some affection to because of Cobra Kai and the Terry Silver character and wanting to see his backstory. As its own movie, however, it's not very interesting. They spend a good chunk of it trying to get Danny to sign a contract so that he'll enter the tournament, even though Mr. Miyagi says he shouldn't. And Terry Silver is a complete cartoon character, mustache-twirling villain. I just, like I said, add a little bit of extra affection for this one after having seen Cobra Kai because it's a nice backstory for these characters, but I have almost like even less to say about this one than the Next Karate Kid, because the Next Karate Kid, I feel it really did do something. It just wasn't very interesting. Karate Kid Part 3 kind of just redoes the first movie, but with less there. And it is kind of interesting to have Daniel join Cobra Kai, because that's kind of a good part of his arc, to have him kind of go to the dark side. It really reminds me of Spider-Man 3, honestly. When, especially when he like punches a guy at a bar or a nightclub or whatever, and it really gave me some black suit Spider-Man vibes there, where it's like, oh, I'm out of control. I'm turning into an asshole, and I can't help it. But yeah, it's there's just not much there, so it's there's not even much to talk about with that one. Number 5, Karate Kid Part 2. I know a lot of people really like this one, and it's, I don't mind it. It's got kind of the trajectory of the Rocky franchise to me, where the first one is the big original idea, and the second one continues in that same vein and feels like a legit continuation of the first one, and then the third one feels very silly and very campy. And well, I'll continue that metaphor when we get to Karate Kid Legends, and I'll explain what I mean by that. But yeah, Karate Kid Part 2, it's legit. Like, it's a solid expansion of the universe, expansion of the characters. It's a little bit boring. There's not as much of the karate training stuff. There's not as much of the karate fighting stuff. And it does come down to, again, like one fight at the end. But at least it's a fight. It's a karate fight between two people. So it's not like the next Karate Kid where it's just like this school gang or whatever who are trying to kill one of their other students, one of their former members, because he quit the squad. I don't know. It's so weird. But we're talking about Part 2 here. So Part 2, they expand Mr. Miyagi's character in an interesting way. They flesh him out in an interesting way. We get to introduce Chosen, who's an important character in Cobra Kai. And I think that it's nice to see a little bit of variety to the setting, and we get to go to the other side of the world and see how Daniel adapts to that environment. So, yeah, there's, again, not a lot there, but it is an interesting expansion. I like it. All right, number 4, Karate Kid Legends. I was hoping this one would rank higher for me. Now, to continue the Rocky metaphor, if you only look at the Ralph Macchio movies, for example, okay? Forget about the next Karate Kid and the Kung Fu Kid and Cobra Kai and all that, and just look at Karate Kid Part 2, Karate Kid Part 3, and Karate Kid Legends as the Ralph Macchio films. When you look at those, like I say, the Karate Kid is like Rocky, Karate Kid Part 2 is like Rocky 2, legit continuation, expansion of the universe. Karate Kid Part 3 takes it into campy territory, silly territory with a one-dimensional villain. Karate Kid Legends is Rocky 4, in that it's bright, it's flashy, it's colorful, it's marketable, it's probably going to make some money, and it's got a lot of montages, so many montages. The whole thing feels like a music video to me, all right? So it's not entertaining. And in fact, to continue the Rocky metaphor even further, one of the main characters, again, spoiler, because this was not in the marketing, weirdly enough, one of the main characters is a boxer. He's an old over-the-hill boxer, played by Joshua Jackson, I think. And the main plot of the movie, which they did not put in the marketing at all, is the main character, who's a kid named Lee, who knows Kung Fu, is teaching Kung Fu to this over-the-hill boxer, Rocky Balboa. He's not Rocky, but basically Rocky. So that he can use Kung Fu techniques in the boxing ring, while still following the rules of boxing, I assume. And when I was watching the movie, I was like, I knew that the movie was only an hour and a half long, so I kept checking my watch, and I'm like, as soon as the boxer character, I don't remember his name, asks Lee to teach him Kung Fu, I was like, they're joking, right? Like, we don't have time for that. This movie's an hour and a half long. Where's Jackie Chan? Where's Ralph Macchio? We're not, you're just messing with me. And it kind of seemed like that was the case, that it got dismissed very quickly and they weren't going to go that way. But then Lee decides he is going to train this guy. And we get this old boxer learning Kung Fu. And I'm like, did I not watch all of the trailers? Because when was this? We're not going to have time for these other characters to show up. And I guess what I was expecting was something more like Deadpool and Wolverine, where you put the big names on the poster, but you might have some surprises later on. So if you have Deadpool and Wolverine on the poster, you can sell it on that concept. And then I thought, okay, and then later you're gonna get Blade, you're gonna get Elektra, you're gonna get X-23, you're gonna get Human Torch, you're gonna get Gambit. So they got something up their sleeve, so they can sell the movie, but they've got other surprises in store for you. This, I thought when I was going into it that was what they were going to do. So like, okay, you've already told me that there's going to be Jackie Chan and Ralph Macchio, but wouldn't it be cool if up your sleeve you were also hiding Hilary Swank and William Zabka and Michael Ironside and Walton Goggins? Like, what if it really was Karate Kid Legends? What if it was a whole bunch of characters that they didn't advertise that were coming in as a third act surprise? But instead, it's almost like Spider-Man No Way Home if they had put Tobey Maguire and Andrew Garfield on the poster and marketed it as Spider-Man Legends, all three Spider-Men working together. Because if they had marketed it that way, and then you go and watch the movie, you're like, I don't know, they're not in it that much. Like, they're in it for the last third of the movie or so, but, you know, they kind of oversold the whole three Spider-Man thing. But they didn't. When they actually released the movie, they kept that as a surprise. So when I go into Spider-Man thinking that these other guys are going to be in there just as a brief cameo, if at all, when they show up for a third of the movie, it's exciting, it's surprising. But when you have your entire marketing campaign selling the last third of the movie, which is what they did for Karate Kid Legends, like everything in the trailer, almost everything in the trailer, is from like the last third of the movie. That's about as much time as Jackie Chan, Ralph Macchio, and this new kid, Lee, are spending time together. It's basically one montage, really, that they get all of them together, because the training and the final tournament are intercut with each other as a montage. So it didn't go as deep into the characters as I was hoping. It didn't develop the connection between Han and Mr. Miyagi the way that I thought they were going to do when they set it up in the prologue. So, like in the prologue, it made it sound like they were going to do this huge retcon where they were going to explain how the Han family was connected to the Miyagi family. But that opening was all they ever said about that. They didn't expand on that at all during the actual movie, other than to say that Mr. Han and Mr. Miyagi were friends. That's about it. Now, that being said, I liked the movie. It's very entertaining. I had a good time at it. And honestly, like, I had a better time watching Karate Kid Legends in the theaters than I did watching Mission Impossible: The Final Reckoning in theaters, in terms of entertainment, in terms of that was a good time at the movies. And yes, spoiler alert again, William Zabka did eventually make a cameo, and it was great. I was so glad they didn't just have him be like a random face in the crowd, like a meaningless cameo, but they seem to actually understand why people love him on Cobra Kai and bring it in and have it actually be a real scene that plays to his strengths. So that kind of put me over the edge walking out of the theater, because up until the last scene, I was like, yeah, it was pretty good. But then in that last scene, when they finally like nailed that Johnny dialogue with, you know, a scene between William Zabka and Ralph Macchio, I was like, okay, now I'm happy. Now you made me smile on the way out. Good call. So I like the movie. I just don't like the way that it was advertised. I think that they probably could have been a little bit more honest about what the movie was actually going to be. Because the stuff about like a kid teaching a boxer kung fu, that is interesting and new and fresh. But it wasn't what I thought I was signing up for when I went to go see it. So that being said, it is a very fun movie, and it's one of the most entertaining ones in the series. Now, number 3 though, The Kung Fu Kid, aka The Karate Kid 2010. It was supposed to be called The Kung Fu Kid. I remember the articles that came out in the years ahead of it when they said they were making a remake of The Karate Kid called The Kung Fu Kid. which makes sense, right? And then right before they released it, they changed the title to The Karate Kid for marketing reasons. And it's silly because he doesn't learn karate in that movie, he learns kung fu. And especially now that Karate Kid and Kung Fu Kid exist in the same universe, it's confusing to have them have the same title, especially when one of them doesn't learn karate. Okay? So, yeah, and I'm retconning it here. Hopefully they can change it sometime in the future. And just like Dead Reckoning Part 1 has been kind of quietly changed to just Dead Reckoning, I hope that one day the Karate Kid 2010 is known as the Kung Fu Kid officially. So, that being said, there was a time when I liked this one better than the original. I thought they nailed it. Especially, look, Jaden Smith is pretty good in it. Jackie Chan is fantastic in it. And he doesn't fight that much in the movie. And that's kind of what he was known for. I'd seen him in Rush Hour and Shanghai Noon and, a bunch of other, action parts where he would do a lot of his fighting. And this one, he really didn't do that much, and he leaned hard on the drama. He leaned hard on giving a performance and a character, and it's maybe the best acting I've ever seen Jackie Chan do in The Kung Fu Kid. He's deep and sad, and he really cares, but he's broken, and it's, I think, why people were a little bit upset that he's so Jackie Chan-like in Karate Kid Legends, because he doesn't seem like the same Mr. Han, although maybe he's gotten better over the years and has a new lease on life because of his interactions with Dre, the Jaden Smith character in this one. But yeah, this one, I think that it's got some heart to it. And my only problem with it is that it's a little bit too long. They could have tightened it up a little bit, which is kind of funny because I actually think Karate Kid Legends was too short. I think that they needed to give that one room to breathe a little bit because it's just so fast. It's so fast. They just do a speed run through all of the Ralph Macchio stuff, most of the Jackie Chan stuff. It's very montagey. And that was one where I'm like, okay, you actually could have stretched this out closer to 2 hours. And I think the Kung Fu Kid could have been cut back a little bit closer to 2 hours. I think 2 hours is like the sweet spot for these Karate Kid movies. And so that they don't overstay their welcome, but they also don't speed through it to the point where they don't actually get to develop any of the characters. So I think it's a legit recreation of the original. It's a different setting. It's a different style. And the characters are different. And, Jaden Smith, because he's not playing a high schooler, he's like 12 in the movie. I forget how old he's supposed to be in the movie. But he's a kid. And, he's a cute kid. And he's got some charm to him. You can see a little bit of the Will Smith swagger in him, even with him being a small child. And it's a good movie, I think. I think it's a really decent Karate Kid movie. And it just doesn't have all of the iconic Cobra Kai stuff, and it kind of it's a new twist on a familiar story, but I think very well done, very well developed. It does all the things right that Karate Kid Legends does wrong, unfortunately, which is that it gives the characters room to exist, breathe, and grow. So that's what I love about that one. And the fighting itself is really interesting. The Kung Fu looks great, as a more modern take on the Karate Kid. Number 2, The Karate Kid 1984, the original Karate Kid. This one, again, I used to like the Kung Fu Kid more, but I think, again, after watching Cobra Kai, I fell in love with these characters. I love the fact that we've got connections to Johnny Lawrence and Daniel LaRusso and Mr. Miyagi, and even Allie. Allie has a cameo on Cobra Kai. So seeing where it all started, the classic wax on, wax off, paint the fence, sand the floor, it is like Rocky Jr., it's kind of like Rocky 5, it is like Rocky Jr. in Rocky 5, except he's the main character. So And it's a classic. I appreciate it so much more now with how iconic all of the stuff became later on. You know, sweep the leg and the crane kick and all that. And it's engaging. It's an interesting movie to see how Mr. Miyagi will take this kid in and teach him stuff. But you know, like Yoda, he's like, you're not supposed to use this to attack other people and be aggressive. You only use it for knowledge and defense, never for attack. So, yeah, he's basically Yoda, right? I mean, this was around the same time as Empire Strikes Back. So, yeah, and I think that it still holds up today. It is very 80s, but I don't mind that. You know, look, you know what else is 80s? Rocky 3. And it's still good. So, but all of that being said, number one, still the best thing in the Karate Kid franchise by far, in my opinion, Cobra Kai. Cobra Kai! I didn't understand what the big deal was about this show. I heard it was one of the highest rated shows of all time, and I'm like, eh. And especially, and this is probably just my own perception of the brand, but when it first aired on YouTube Red, I somehow, because it was on YouTube, thought it was like a fan film series almost. So, yeah, like, it's like somehow when people put stuff up on YouTube and it's like fan fiction, this I thought was that. I thought it was like Karate Kid fan fiction, and they just happened to get the original actors to reprise their roles. And when I was watching it, I was shocked at how legit the show was and how it did remind me of things like Better Call Saul. And it did have lots of callbacks to Rocky. And at first I was like, is this on purpose? Are they purposely referencing Rocky? And as the series goes on, absolutely, it could not be clearer that they are hardcore referencing the Rocky series for maybe no other reason than the fact that the director of the original Rocky directed the first 3 Karate Kid movies. So there's definitely a connection there. But it's got so many 80s references in it, and it's got this interesting kind of vibe to it where it's a throwback to the 80s. I think there's another show like The Goldbergs that makes a lot of 80s references and is steeped in 80s pop culture. And this is like one of those shows that is deeply ingrained in 80s pop culture and also the Karate Kid mythology, but in a way that's almost meta. So it's referencing Top Gun, it's referencing Rocky, and it's referencing the Karate Kid as if the Karate Kid is part of the 80s pop culture, like it's a fictional movie in their universe, except it really happened. So it's like in the Karate Kid universe, but also it's a throwback and almost a parody reference to the Karate Kid movies. So I just think that it's handled perfectly. I think William Zabka is a perfect lead on that show. And at least for a little while, Ralph Macchio is a great villain, a great antagonist on that show. And eventually, you know, they're a little bit more in sync with each other by the end of it. But it's so funny. It's so funny, and the action is so great. And there's deep themes about bullying. The show, I maintain, is all about bullying. That's the theme of the show. And not just what it's like to be bullied, because we've seen that before, but what turns somebody into a bully, seeing things from the bully's perspective, especially since we start with Johnny. We start with Johnny, who was the high school bully, and then we get to see good kids turn bad, bad kids turn good, and people just siding with one team or the other and just treating each other really horribly, and seeing if they can move past that, seeing if they can grow beyond it and mature and forgive each other. And it also deals with the question of what happens if your bully is a parent? What happens if your bully is a mentor? What if your bully is 30 years older than you? You know, how does that affect you? And when you are 30 years older, how do you view your behavior when you were younger, when you were a bully in high school? And can you justify your own actions? Do you learn from your mistakes or not? So, Johnny Lawrence, lovable loser, it does remind me of Better Call Saul and other things like that, where he's deeply flawed and immoral, but has a heart. Deep down, he cares. And that's what it's all about. And it's such a great twist on the mythology of Karate Kid, where, you know, Mr. Miyagi in the original film was so specific because he was teaching Daniel karate secretly. He's like, big circle, you know, up, down, you know, and all these house chores had to be done in a very specific way. And when Johnny has Miguel cleaning the windows of the dojo, Miguel's like, hey, is there any particular way you want me to wash these windows? And Johnny's like, nah, I don't really give a shit. Because it's just a parody. It's a parody, but it's a parody that at its heart takes the Karate Kid franchise seriously. So I watched the whole thing. I watched like 4 episodes a day of Cobra Kai, and I was so obsessed with it that I'm going to go through the entire Karate Kid series, including Cobra Kai, again in the very near future, and maybe appreciate it a little bit more deeply now that I have more of the backstory, because I watched Cobra Kai before I watched most of the Karate Kid movies. I saw the original Karate Kid, and I saw the remake, and then I saw nothing else until I watched Cobra Kai. But now I'm going to watch it all linearly and try to get the full experience. So that's it. That's what I got. These are my rankings for the Karate Kid universe, up to and including Cobra Kai and Karate Kid Legends. So go ahead and leave your comments down below. What are your rankings? And don't just throw up your rankings, but give me some rationale. Why? The why is what makes this conversation interesting. That's what really gets into the nitty-gritty of it. When you have to make these films compete against each other, when you have to make the TV show compete with the films, that's when you get to learn what it is that makes these things interesting and what it is that drives you as a fan to keep coming back to these, or to ignore them completely and pretend they don't exist. So go ahead, leave some comments about how you would rank these films and TV show, and like, share, subscribe, and I'll see you next time.